We're going to continue talking about security, particular user login, and that sort of profile information on web pages in ASP.NET. One problem we're going to quickly run into as we jump into Chapter 20 is that the Chapter 20 example from the textbook has some issues. I've opened it up here, and I've got the default page here. Let's show it in Design View. And it just shows your status and then a link to log in, and that sends you to this login.aspx page. When we run this, it seems to run fine, but the Microsoft has a built-in membership and user login kind of capability, and it uses a database for that. And here's the example is trying to store it locally in an ASP NetDB file. In fact, our web config file should be pointing to that, but it doesn't. It used to be that some of the stuff was done more automated, was just done differently than it is with the current system. So if we run this example, at least on my machine with my version, Visual Studio 2012, the default page comes in, but if I try to log in, if I try to either log in or click on register for the first time, I'll get an error. So if I just try to log in and hit the login button, I'll get an error. So here's the error. It had some problems connecting up to the SQL server and configuring things. And in fact, if I try to open up this database, this MDF file in SQL Server, I'll get a similar error, which will say that that database file is not compatible with my current version of SQL Server. And this isn't unfortunately uncommon with Microsoft .NET stuff. It's it's updated fairly regularly, and and the different components like SQL Server, Visual Studio .NET, the .NET framework. These different things are updated, and there are often compatibility issues between the different versions. In fact, I've been hired at times to just work through some of these compatibility issues with earlier versions. So we're going to just go through this example, a similar example, but we're going to use the built-in example here. So rather than using this Chapter 20 example, we'll kind of recreate some of these features in a new example. So we're going to go File, New, Project. You could also do New Website, and that's very similar, but we'll do New Project. And we have been creating an empty web project, web application. We're going to do a web forms application. That'll provide a number of pages for us automatically and create the database for user roles and membership and that sort of stuff. So I'm just going to give this a name, CIS 3049, Unit 7, sample recorded. And just wait a sec for it to create this sample page or the sample website. Now, one problem we'll see is there will be a number of new things created in this sample website that we'll talk about now. So let's just kind of walk through what's in this sample website. There's a couple pages. There's a default page, default.aspx page here with a bunch of content in it, and again, in these, rather than in an empty website, they don't provide anything for the look and feel, and here they're trying to make a nice looking sample page. There's also an About Us and a Contacts web page here with information. Now, all these web pages use something called master pages, which hold the menus, and then within that master page is some section you can edit for each page. Again, we haven't talked at all about master pages because, again, that's more on the design end of web development here, not on the C# programming. But we will just mention it here. There is a master page, site.master, which lays out what the page should look like. And it includes links to the login button and a register button here. So that's here within this master page. And one thing we'll see is that when we're working with Microsoft's built-in membership management things that it's nice to use some. Microsoft provides some nice interfaces to this. So like these buttons for going to the register and login pages are actually not created with all the standard formats, but are actually created using some tools under the login tab. We haven't looked under the login tab, but there's a number of things, and we'll see those and more of them in just a sec. But one of them is a login view, which just includes, it can be configured, and in this case configures a register and a login button, and is a nice view of what your current login status is. So again, that's in the site master page, and that page is used by all these other pages. So inside the site master is an area where you can put your source, what's called the content area here, placeholder for the content and everything else. So then each of these pages, like the default page, look at the source here. Let's close this up again. It will cite the master page, and so when you create these pages, you can actually specify what the master page is. And so this content will be stuck inside the master page for these pages. Okay, so we have just normal pages here, and we can create some new pages. There are also some additional pages under the account information. They've stuck the login page here. And again, this shows this whole master page login, so it includes the master page templates, but within that, the code is actually just this one control here. So this is the control, or the code, the controls that are used for the login page. Similarly, there's a register page with collects information about the registration information. So now let's bring up this tool box again. Again, not in the standard, but in the login stuff, there is information. There are controls for doing things like login and creating a user information. Password recovery. So there are some controls automatically built in and some wizards that you can walk through for this sort of stuff. But we'll be using this, and I'm not going to talk too much about further configuration of this. This is beyond the scope of what we can do in this class. But you can also configure these controls in different ways to do what you want. But we'll just have to watch. We'll see that we'll be redirected to these areas at times. Now, this will be stored in app database. There will be a database there, and also in our SQL server there will be stuff. So let me just bring up this SQL Server Manager. And initially I won't see a database for this project yet until I start running it and setting things up. But eventually, when I come back here, it will create a database on my SQL Server for storing the login, the membership information, user profiles, and that sort of stuff. Okay, so let's run this. And by default, it should open up the default .aspx page and run that. So as long as I have that there, it'll open up that page by default. From here, I can go to the login or the register page. And I can register if I don't have an account, and I can create this account. So I'm just going to create a user here and make up an email address for that user because I won't be using that. The email address is just for password recovery, and I'm just going to use password as the password because this is a trivial account that's not being used for anything, and register for this user. So now my user status up here, it'll say hello and user 2, the user I created, and log off or on. So I can log off and log on. Now I can log on to a different, I created user 1 and user 2, so I can log in and either one. And now it says I'm logged into user 1. So after going through that login process, let's just take a look now at SQL Server. So I should see in my SQL Server database that I may have to do a refresh, so I might have to refresh this, but I should see under databases let's move this over, a database, ASP.NET dash, and then the name of my project, and then a dash and some number for a key here. Maybe that's the date. I don't know what that number is. So it puts a number there too. And so this is the database for the membership information. If I look in that, I'll see tables. So I'll have users here. Let me just view that data. I'll have roles, profiles, memberships, and applications, and users in roles. So I have a little database system set up here. And again, here's my 2 users that I created in here and some of the information about them. So it's using this database to track this information for my users. We have to make sure when we move our application from one place to the other, we recreate or move this database to wherever the final production server is going to be running. Let's talk a little bit about how we can then control access and work with that. So we'll want certain pages may be visible or to people logged in or not. So let's start by looking at the web config file here. So the web config file now has a connection string added called default connection, and this is for my database that stores my membership information. So there's the database that stores my membership information under a connection string called default connections. Also in here, turned on is forms authentication. So authentication mode forms authentication, and then the location of the login form. On the previous example, I think it was just ~/login because the login form was inside the main folder, but this time it's inside the accounts folder, so it's just ~account/login.aspx. And the timeout, I think last time we had a timing out for 30 minutes. This time we're having the login timeout a little longer by default. We also then specify some information about where the membership database is, the profile database is, and the role manager database is, where this information is going to be stored. So the membership information is like the user login stuff. Profiles are information we can store about each user in our code. And that's covered a little bit in the next chapter, and we'll hopefully just get brief coverage of it later on. And in role managers, you can have users in roles, and you can assign roles certain privileges as well as members certain privileges. So it's just a way of better managing your membership. In all of these examples, we're specifying what connection string to use for the database. So they're using this default connection string. That means they'll be looking at that database for the corresponding tables that they need to run for these different providers. Now, if you remember, for security, we have both authentication, that's what we're going to use to authenticate or log in users, and then we have authorization. And there's no by default authorization information here, meaning so that any user can log in or can access these pages, the default pages, or any of these pages. So let's change that. Let's add some authentication to this. So still within the system web tag, I'm going to add an authentication tag here. So again, within system web, so right down below the end of the system web, I'm going to add an authentication tag and an end authentication tag, and then I'm going to deny certain users. And the question mark is used to denote anonymous users who are not logged in. So I'm just going to deny all anonymous users. So that means when I run this page, it should force me to log in right away, redirect me to the login page. So let me save this, and then we'll run this application again. So before it used to go right to the default.aspx page and bring that up. Now it should redirect me to the login page and force me to log in before it shows this page, because we've got that authentication enabled for everywhere. So again, it's mapped right away here. So it says it wanted to go to default.aspx, but it's mapping me kind of to the login.aspx. Here I have to log in, user1, password, login, and now I'll go to the default ASPX page. Oops. There, if I can type in my password correctly. So now I'm back to the default.aspx page. So that's how we can control that. Now, let's say we don't want to make users log into all the pages, but there's just certain pages we do want them to log into. So I'm going to create a folder and move that authentication to that folder. So over here I'm going to create a new item. Just make this a little bigger so you can see this. So right click, new, and I'm just going to create a new folder here, and I'm going to call this secure pages or something like that. And then within the secure pages, I'm just going to create a new page, add a new web form. Again, I could be going under add items and doing it that way too, and click web form and just do, I'm just going to call this web form 1 and add that in here. So that's my first form here. Now, what I want to also do is add a web config file. Right now I have a web config file at the top level. I'm going to add another one at this level. So I'm going to do add, and then go down here to, oh, it's not listed by default. I'm going to go to new item, and under web, there should be a web configuration file here. Add that. That'll add a web.config file and open up. It has the basic templates in here. So I'm going to open up both my web config files. So I'm going to move this authorization tag. I'm going to take it out of my top level web config file. That's the one here at the top level. So that without any authorization will mean anyone can access the pages here. And I'm going to go into this web config file and paste it in there. So I'm only going to have authorization for pages in this folder, because the pages in this folder will use this web config file and grab the settings there, and then for additional settings they'll go into the next web.config file. So I'm going to deny all anonymous users to all the web pages in this secure pages folder. Okay, so I'm going to save this. So now I'm going to create another page outside of the web config file. So let's do one more web page, add web form 2. So here's my web form 2 here, and so this is a non-secure page. So now let's create a link to this page. I'm just going to switch to design view. This is a non-secure page. Give me a couple line breaks here. And a nice quick way to create a link to another page, I can just drag that page on here and link it in to the other page. So let's do some saving here and run this. So let's make sure web for what we're saying in the secure page. This is a secure page. And then let's jump back to web page 2 here. All right, so let's start at our non-secure page. Oh wait, I still have a default page. Yeah, okay, I think it's going to work. Sometimes it'll load up the default page instead, but I think it's coming to this web page too. Again, I didn't have to log in because I don't have any authorization or authentication set up here. So there's no authorization set up here, and so now, but if I go to the second web page, that's in a secure area, and should read the login, so it'll redirect me to the login page. I have to log in here. 2 password login. I'm just not typing passwords today very well. Okay, so now I'm at my secure page. I'm logged in, and I can jump back to my insecure page. And now if I go back to my secure page, it will remember that I'm logged in, so now I don't have to log in again. I can jump back and forth through these pages. So it's very easy to create this sort of login and set up within ASP.NET using the standard features for these pages. So you can create these web pages and these non-web pages. I mean, these secure pages and non-secure pages. And again, it all comes down to the web config files and how they're organized. So within secure pages, we have this authorization, and we're denying all anonymous users. And then in this config file on the main level, we don't have any authorization. At some point, you do have to have an authentication tag. We don't have one in the inside web config, so it goes to the outer web config file and finds that authentication and uses the login.aspx file in accounts to do the login information.